Hello. Thanks for having me today. Maybe I can start by explaining this title slide. You might think looking at this that we're a gaming company. We're actually not. But one of the things that I love about the PlayStation controller is that it is ubiquitous. Everybody who holds one in their hand knows exactly how to use it, and they feel comfortable and they feel in control. And it is an interface for technology, and it's also something that is standardized. So with that in mind, maybe I can go into a bit more discussion. But before I get into that, maybe to give you a little bit of history about my background for the people of TX that don't actually know me that well yet. I started, I'm from America, and I came to Switzerland in 2006. So I spent quite a bit of time in Switzerland doing contracting and freelancing before I landed at local.ch in 2012. I worked there as head of web engineering for a while and doing some change management stuff, and then I came to Tem Media in 2016. At that point in time, I worked with what was then founded as Core Engineering, and we were helping the different companies in the TX group with technology issues and things like that. And I ended up at Ricardo, and Ricardo was going through some really big changes at the time. And after being at Ricardo for a few months, I joined as CTO there, where I continued for 4 years. And now I am coming back into the mothership, so to speak. So starting in September, it was announced I would be CTO of TX Markets and focusing on the marketplace problems with technology and those kinds of things. A little bit of personal history about me. You know, sometimes people say, oh, you're an engineer, you're just a coder. Well, actually, my career is really weird. I spent quite a bit of time actually doing things. I was studied music and composition. I play piano. I took 2 years off of technology when I was in New York to work on film. I kind of had enough with programming and code, and I actually was doing sound recording, holding a boom mic, and then I learned how to do video editing with Avid and Final Cut Pro and After Effects and all of these different things. Took a film out that we ended up winning some awards in indie film competitions and things like that. And then I switched completely back into coding again and discovered Ruby on Rails and realized my love was software after all. I also like to do a lot of writing. I'm very deep into electronics, as some of you might know, designing circuit boards and building synthesizers and things like that, as well as 3D printing and this kind of stuff. So I'm a habitual tinkerer. When I was in New York, I did quite a lot of startup type stuff. So I started 2 different startups. One was focused in the mobile space and parking. And I also had a web agency, and then with 3 other guys founded a web agency several years after that. So a lot of kind of work where you have a customer and they have something and you have to produce a campaign or an application of some kind, and then you see a completely different industry after that. So that was really good experience for me to see all of these different cases. I took a company public when I was 34. It was a really bizarre kind of experiment that I did with involving reverse mergers and all kinds of stuff, but I was president of a publicly held company for about a week. That was a whole other story I can tell another day, but it taught me a lot about business and fundraising and things like that. So aside from that, I worked for left-wing alternative media for about 4 years as a direct programmer and also doing some consulting later on, trying to get the word out about the Iraq War and things like that. And I worked on some software for the blind, visual resource assistance, it's called, how people can teach blind people how to get through their life, whether it's cooking or getting to the bus every morning, and the training process that involves them, as well as making software accessible, which was something that was really interesting. I still do a lot of coding these days, mostly with C++ on microcontrollers, but I was a full stack developer, so I did front end, back end, HTML, CSS, databases, the whole thing. I even did Perl, which is still relevant if you do regular expressions. I really like Perl, but it's not maybe my favorite language anymore. Anyway, that picture is me 30 years ago. I think I look the same. You don't. That's okay. So I'm here at TX Markets, and I'm really excited to be here. And one thing I wanted to point out is there's more than 140 engineers here. This is actually pretty cool when you consider all of the different things that we do and what we can do. And when you look at the capabilities of our engineering at TX Markets, it's impressive. Most of the things that you see here are open source, which is one thing. There's also a very wide range of cutting edge things happening here. I think it's also something that reminds you of the knowledge that we have and the knowledge that we share, or sometimes should share, but maybe we don't enough. And as we progressed going from, I mean, if you looked at this situation in 2016, a lot of these logos wouldn't be here. Today, I think the technologies and the techniques that we're using in TX Markets engineering is as good as you would find in any startup or any major tech company now. And this is something I think is incredibly cool. I wanted to highlight also some significant achievements that happened this year that you maybe don't get to hear about this as much as you should. But for example, at Car4U, they have an incredibly high team engagement and retention there. They switched their entire pricing model to a transactional model. They have fraud detection going on. They implemented Kafka and Confluent for event sourcing or event-driven architecture. They implemented inventory, import and export, performance monitoring, and I love this pragmatic CMS, which was basically HTML and CSS rather than integrating a big heavy CMS. They did it very low tech, which was cool. HomeGate is going serverless. So many people don't realize this, but they're doing functions in the cloud, and they switched critical parts of their platform to that. They implemented a Snowflake data warehouse. They're using machine learning, and no more hardware on their side. Everything's in Amazon. They also completely migrated their mobile application to Swift, so it's up to date and using the latest and greatest. Tutti is fully on Amazon. This was a huge achievement for this company. They also found they improved their uptime and speed. They figured out a way to import listings from 15 or more platforms into their listing and search engine, and they rewrote a lot of things. They added location-based search. They updated their search engine. They moved all of their JavaScript to TypeScript, which is another pattern that I see many of the companies doing, as well as automating their alerting and monitoring and things like that. In Ricardo, one of the biggest tech breakthroughs this year was classification. So uploading an image and giving a little bit of a description, the system can understand what type of product it is, what attributes there are for it, the brands, the sizes. They can recommend that if you upload a table, it needs to describe the dimensions, because that's important to people. This is really significant because we break through search as a text technology. So instead of matching text words, we can actually understand the meaning of what it is that people are searching for in the items that we have. This breaks the language barrier. It does all kinds of cool things. We want to bring this technology to other companies in the marketplaces. We also integrated with Swiss Post there. New firewall with Cloudflare for DDoS protection. We'll bring that also to other companies in the group. And new iOS and Android applications were released. It used to be running on Xamarin, which is an older technology. Now everything is on a new code base maintained by the team there. They're doing a great job. Chaos Engineering, Ricardo got their uptime to really good levels, and the performance and automation around operations is just top-notch at the moment. One of the messages here is that all of TX Markets at this point is fully running on the cloud, and all running in a way that's very monitored and sustainable, which I think is an awesome place for us to be for the next stage. A few more things to point out. Speed. One of the biggest accomplishments in engineering is when you can get something into the hands of users quickly. A couple of cases to share with you. HomeGate delivered live video viewing seamlessly in just 10 days. Car4U built a MVP in a single sprint for the buying online epic, as well as a back office solution in a week. This is really cool when you consider how long it takes to build software that if you have the right ingredients in place, you can really crank through and get something good to market quickly. Another pattern that we're going to see more of over the next year is machine learning. Using machine learning and AI to basically do things like fraud and understand the pricing of goods, to make better recommendations. This infrastructure is really starting to take hold in all of the marketplace companies. And together with TDA, I think we have an amazing capability here as well, that we can make better recommendations and detect things and do things that are above and beyond what we were capable of before. In addition, with the world becoming more dangerous online, I think the security part is really important, particularly in marketplaces where we need to make sure that our items are authentic, our users are real, and that people don't get trapped. But also that we don't get hit by distributed denial of service attacks and things like that. So to this effect, together with Andreas at the group level, we're implementing some really good security measures. But let me switch gears for a second. This is a sodium vapor street lamp. And if you're my age, you know that yellow glow that you see when you're on the street. These lamps take a long time to heat up. They generate a lot of heat. They use a fair amount of power for what they are, especially by today's standards, but they're cheap and they're easy and they're affordable. Problem is that the bulbs need to be changed. The lights have to be serviced, and this is something that cities take on as a cost. In modern terms, we have LED street lamps, and they are way more efficient. They put much better, higher output light out. And once you've installed them, they require almost no maintenance whatsoever. Now, in order to use this technology, though, you've got to get people that have to go up to the top of the pole and change them, and in some cases you have to change the way the grid and the signaling things are set up. So it's infrastructure, and it's expensive to upgrade. And when we talk about infrastructure and as an investment, lowering maintenance costs, but delaying other things, this is one of the challenges we face as a marketplace company. Not all of our brands are new, and even the new efforts that we've had create technical debt. There's a saying that I like to say, which is software is not an asset, software is a cost. Every line of code that you write requires maintenance. It requires monitoring and so forth. And the longer that code remains untouched, the more difficult it is to change. And changeability is one of the most important things. Something that I think we have to realize as a company is that we need to address the technical debt and infrastructure that we've created and try to get the footprint as small as possible, because if you delay that decision, the teams that need to build features now will find that it takes longer than it should. And if you want these success stories where you can have very short time to market, it has to be based on a really good standardized infrastructure. So food for thought. To put things in perspective, if we just look at the marketplace companies, this is a rough back of the envelope calculation, but we produce together about 150,000 lines of code per month and about 1.7 million lines of code per year. And being a software engineer, I know that also means we probably delete about 100,000 lines of code a month, because that's what happens when you build software. It is constantly changing. We maintain probably around 1,000 services between the different companies. And based on some of the debt, like Tutti, Ricardo have a lot of debt. 15 to 20 million lines of code, I'm guessing, is what our engineers have to maintain. If you look collectively, every software release that we have, we do about 1,000 deployments a month. They will generate errors, alerts, we'll have bugs in production, our customers come to us. This takes time to handle. Together, we do probably around 700 incidents or bugs per month. And every time we decide to do something as an organization, or engineers need to communicate with each other about all of this infrastructure, we have a lot of meetings. Roughly around 1,200 meetings a month, I would guess, for our engineers. Many of them are shared between them. But when you put all of this into perspective, you realize why it costs so much to run our marketplaces business, and where we can optimize. And this brings me to the point about some of the ways I'm thinking about how we can improve. Technical complexity is one of the biggest ones. The tech debt and legacy, as I mentioned. The best practices with each of the companies learning what they've learned and experiencing new technologies and new techniques and the migrations that they've done, sharing that with other people, doing the trainings and the learnings to get up to speed with experts or with each other, and sharing this knowledge. Sharing even infrastructure, code, software that we buy or use, software that we create, and the automation behind it, and the really good ideas, whether it's machine learning or something else. We need time for this. And traditionally, today, up until now, we have not really spent time between the companies sharing this kind of stuff. That's something I want to change. How do we change it? Well, we start with code collaboration. One of the things I'd like to announce to you is that we will very soon open up the code bases of all the marketplace companies in an internal open source model so that all of you will be able to access each other's codes for review, for pull requests, for peer reviews, whatever. But we will share an open environment where we can really get into each other's code bases and see how we do things and begin to share our best practices and so forth. Likewise, we'll start to kick off a process of guilds. For example, with SRE or front-end developers, we'll find commonalities that we have, and we'll have engineers from the different companies getting together on a regular basis to share this and to make even decisions together if we want to standardize things. We'll improve our security. We'll bring smart and effective, cost-effective ways that we can guard our data, guard the privacy of our customers, and protect our network and infrastructure from attack together. We'll also work to introduce some standards with data and APIs and things like that. Consider for a second that every one of the marketplace companies generates listings. We do matchmaking. So somebody uploads an item for sale, they describe it, they pictures of it, someone else then wants to purchase that. We all do that in different ways, and if we want to take advantage of the advancements we've made in fraud detection or classification or price prediction, having standards for those formats would make it a heck of a lot easier than it is today, and we would have a lot less code to write overall. So that's something I believe we should start to work on. How do we do this? I think we do it together, and something I want to say to you is that I'm not a fan of centralization. This is a change that I will introduce in TX Marketplaces, that rather than building up large central resources to provide solutions to the marketplace companies, I will create a collaborative open source model in which our engineers within the marketplaces will work together to contribute and get a benefit out of their work. This, I think, can work because it's also what works at large technology companies that we're competing with, whether it's Amazon or Google or even, yeah, you get it. And my goal is that we can become the best marketplace company in Switzerland, that we are known, we have a reputation for being excellent at engineering, so that when people talk about TX Marketplaces, they say, oh, I've heard of that company. They have fantastic engineers, and they do things really, really well there. Why do we want to do this? Because I think it's important if we want to deliver the best possible products and be as competitive as we can. This is absolutely hands down the best model to do it. My team will be very small, but I want you to know who my team is. At the top row, you see there's Mustafa, who will become our security experts for all of marketplaces. Maxime, who has been working quite closely with marketing on SEO and performance topics, as well as being a veteran web developer. And Maria, who is looking at strategy and how we position ourselves and making sure that products work. And then on the bottom row, you see we have the team of TXMI, which is working at the moment on the login project. And this is my team, and there's a couple of positions that are open, which I'll announce soon as well. And that's the end of my talk, and I would open up to, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Really, really exciting stuff happening here. I think we have time for one or two questions, so I'll just keep an eye on the chat. And maybe while we're waiting for the 20-second delay to catch up with us, just ask where you see this impacting also the other TX Markets teams. So if you're collaborating with the engineering teams, how does product need to follow up with that? How do we catch up with you?
Exactly. So the basic idea is we're not going to disappear and then create some magical code stuff and then throw it into production. By contrast, we'll look at sourcing from product, what are the toughest problems that we want to solve? Where do we see opportunities? Whether it's in machine learning or in standardizing things. Looking at where our time goes. When engineers are working together, they often run into the same problems. And we'll try to figure out how we can address the issues that we have with speed, with stability, with technology, with security, whatever. And then finding the right people in each of the companies that can have some dedicated time to work together. That's the basic idea. Product is not excluded from this, by the way. I see an opportunity here for innovation, that if we have some risky bet that we want to try out or some opportunity that we can try, that we can also try that together.
Absolutely. Really excited. Yeah, there's no more questions in the chat, so
Okay.
You can check the chat yourself to see if there's any last-minute questions, and we will get ready for our next talk in just a few minutes.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you very much.